I stared at my bank account 3 times before I could accept what I was seeing. My pension, the money I depended on for my medication, my groceries, my dignity was almost gone. Just gone. My hands were shaking when I opened Facebook an hour later. And there she was, my daughter Rachel, smiling, posing, showing off a brand new designer handbag I knew she could never afford. Not honestly. In that moment, something inside me didn't break. It hardened, and I realized I wasn't going to scream. I was going to wait. If this story touches you in any way, take a moment to like and subscribe. And please tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there right now? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. After my husband passed away 8 years ago, life became quieter but also heavier in ways I hadn't expected. Silence has a weight to it when you're no longer sharing it with someone who understands you without words. I had to learn how to carry everything on my own, emotionally, physically, and most of all, financially. My pension wasn't generous, but it was enough if I was careful. And I was careful. I had a system. Every month I would sit at my small kitchen table with a cup of tea and divide everything out. Medication came first, always. Then property taxes, utilities, groceries. I allowed myself a little extra for things like birthday gifts for Lily or the occasional lunch with my friend Maggie. Nothing extravagant, just enough to remind myself I was still living, not just surviving. I took pride in that, in being independent, in not needing to ask anyone for help, especially not my daughter. Rachel hadn't always been the way she was now. When she was little, she used to sit beside me while I cooked, asking endless questions about everything. She had this laugh that filled the whole room, bright and warm like sunlight through a window. Even as a teenager, she was kind, thoughtful. She used to leave little notes for me, "Love you, Mom," scribbled on scraps of paper I'd find in my purse or tucked into the fridge. Somewhere along the way, that version of Rachel faded. At first it was subtle, a growing interest in clothes, then brands, then appearances. She started comparing herself to other women, friends from work, women she followed online, neighbors with bigger houses and newer cars. I tried to reassure her, told her that happiness didn't come from those things. She would nod, but I could see it in her eyes she didn't believe me. After she married Kevin, it got worse. Kevin is not a bad man, but he is weak in a way that makes life harder for everyone around him. He works as a car salesman, and his income comes and goes in waves. Some months are good, others not so much. Instead of adjusting their lifestyle, Rachel seemed determined to maintain a version of life that didn't match their reality. They went out to expensive restaurants, took trips they couldn't afford, bought things to impress people who, in my opinion, weren't worth impressing. And slowly, Rachel began visiting me more often. At first, I thought it was love, maybe guilt for not calling enough. Maybe she missed me. I didn't question it. I welcomed her in every time with open arms. She would bring groceries sometimes, or coffee, always smiling, always attentive. "Mom, you don't have to do everything alone," she would say, setting bags on the counter like she was taking care of me. Looking back now, I see it differently. It started with small things. "Mom, let me help you set up online banking. It's easier than going to the bank all the time. I can show you how to check your balance from your phone. What if there's an emergency and you need help quickly?" She made it sound like she was protecting me, like she was making my life safer, simpler. And I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter. I remember the afternoon clearly. We sat side by side at my kitchen table, the same place where I used to sort my bills. She held my phone in her hands, moving quickly, confidently. She explained things as she went, but I didn't really follow. Technology has never been my strength. "It's all set now," she said with a satisfied smile. "You won't have to worry about anything. I can even check things for you if you ever need help." I smiled back, grateful, relieved even. It felt like maybe I didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. That was my mistake. Over the next few months, Rachel continued to stop by, sometimes with Lily, sometimes alone. Lily would run into my arms, her small body warm and familiar, and for a moment everything felt right in the world again. Rachel, meanwhile, would move around my house like she belonged there in a different way now, not as a daughter visiting, but as someone managing things. She would glance at my mail, ask casual questions about bills, sometimes even remind me of due dates. "Did you pay this already?" she'd ask, holding up an envelope. "Yes," I'd say. Or sometimes, "Not yet." She would nod, thoughtful. "You really should let me organize this for you, Mom. It's easy to miss things." Each time it sounded reasonable, caring even. And each time I led her a little closer. There were moments, small ones, when something felt off. Once I noticed she hesitated before handing my phone back to me. Another time, she quickly closed an app when I walked into the room. I remember asking her lightly, "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Mom," she said, smiling. "Just checking something for you." I didn't press. I wish I had. Instead, I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being paranoid. That this was what having family support looked like. After all, isn't that what we're told our whole lives? That family helps each other, that we should trust our children, that love means giving without keeping score. So I kept giving. I gave her access. I gave her trust. I gave her the benefit of every doubt. And somewhere in that quiet space between love and denial, something was already being taken from me. I just didn't know it yet. The morning I went to the bank, I told myself there had to be some kind of mistake. I barely slept the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that number again, the balance that didn't make sense, the missing money that felt like a hole opening under my feet. I kept replaying every possibility in my mind. Maybe it was a system error. Maybe a bill had processed twice. Maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood something. Because the alternative, I wasn't ready to face it yet. The bank was only a 10-minute drive from my house, but it felt longer that morning. My hands were tight on the steering wheel, my chest heavy with a quiet dread I couldn't shake. I had been in that building dozens of times over the years. It was familiar, safe, but that day it felt different, colder somehow. When I stepped inside, the air conditioning hit my skin and made me shiver. A young teller greeted me with a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today? I think there's been a mistake with my account," I said, hearing the tremble in my own voice. She nodded, still smiling. "Let me take a look for you." I handed over my ID, my fingers slightly unsteady. She typed for a moment, her eyes scanning the screen. Then her expression shifted just slightly, but enough for me to notice. "One moment," she said. "I'm going to get someone to assist you further." That was when the dread settled in fully. A few minutes later, a man approached me, older, composed, with a calm presence that felt both reassuring and serious at the same time. "Mrs. Gray," he said gently, "I'm Harold Bennett. Why don't we step into my office so we can go over everything together?" I nodded and followed him, my heart beating harder with every step. His office was quiet, with a large desk and 2 chairs facing each other. He gestured for me to sit, then took his place across from me. There was no rush in his movements, no impatience, just a steady, deliberate calm. "Tell me what's concerning you," he said. I took a breath, trying to steady myself. "My pension account, the balance is wrong. There's money missing. A lot of it." He nodded already, pulling up my account on his computer. "Let's take a look." The room felt too quiet as he scrolled through the transactions. I watched his face, searching for clues in his expression. At first, it was neutral. Then it became more focused. And then, something else. Something I couldn't quite name, but it made my stomach tighten. After a moment, he turned the screen slightly toward me. "Mrs. Gray," he said carefully, "there were 2 electronic transfers made from your account 3 days ago." "2," I whispered. He nodded. "Yes. Both within a short period of time. Large amounts, but just under the threshold that would trigger an automatic fraud alert." I stared at the screen, trying to process what he was saying. 2 transfers. Not one mistake. Not an accident. Deliberate. My chest tightened. Where did the money go? He clicked into the transaction details. "To a merchant account. It appears to be associated with a high-end retail boutique." The words hit me like a physical blow. A boutique. A luxury boutique. My mind immediately flashed to that image, Rachel, standing there, smiling, her hand resting on that designer handbag like it was a prize she had earned. I felt something inside me sink. "Can you tell where the transfer was made from?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused for just a moment before answering. "Yes. It was authorized through your online banking system, from a device that has previously been used to access your account." I didn't need him to say it out loud. I already knew. "Still," I asked, "was it?" "My phone." He shook his head gently. "No. A different device, but one that has been logged before. Rachel." The name echoed in my mind, heavy and undeniable now. I felt my face grow warm, a wave of humiliation rising up from somewhere deep inside me. Not just because the money was gone, but because of how it was taken. Quietly, carefully, without me even noticing until it was too late. I see, I said, though my voice didn't quite sound like my own anymore. Harold leaned forward slightly, his tone softening. Mrs. Gray, I need to ask, did you authorize these transactions or give anyone permission to access your account? The question hung in the air between us. I could have lied. I could have said no, immediately pretended I had no idea how this happened. Filed a fraud claim. Let the bank investigate. Let the system handle it. But the truth was more complicated than that. I allowed my daughter to help me set up my online banking, I said slowly. She's been assisting me with it for a few months. He nodded, not judging, not interrupting. Do you believe she may have made these transactions? He asked gently. The words felt heavy in my chest. Did I believe it? No, I knew it, but saying it out loud, that was something else entirely. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Yes, I said quietly. I believe she did. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable, just respectful. I'm very sorry, he said. And for some reason, that was the moment it became real. Not when I saw the missing money, not when I saw the handbag, but right then, sitting in that office with a stranger, looking at me with quiet sympathy. Because sympathy meant it wasn't a mistake. It meant this had happened. To me. By my own daughter. What are my options, I asked, forcing myself to stay steady. He folded his hands on the desk. You have a few. We can initiate a formal fraud investigation. However, if the transactions were made by someone you authorized to access your account, the situation becomes more complex. I understand, I said. You could also pursue the matter privately, he continued. Document everything, request repayment, or if necessary, pursue legal action against my own child. The thought made my chest ache. I see, I repeated. He hesitated for a moment, then added, for now, I strongly recommend we secure your account, change your passwords, remove any linked devices, and restrict access. We can do that immediately. Yes, I said quickly. Please. As he began the process, I sat there in silence, staring at the screen but not really seeing it anymore. 2 transactions. Carefully timed, planned, executed without hesitation. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. And somehow, that hurt more than the money itself. When everything was secured, Harold printed out copies of the transaction records and handed them to me. If you need any further assistance, he said, please don't hesitate to contact me. I took the papers, my hands steadier now but colder. Thank you, I said. As I walked out of the bank, the sunlight outside felt almost too bright, too normal for what had just happened inside me. People passed by. Cars drove past. Life continued unchanged. But for me, something had shifted. Not broken. Not yet, but changed. And as I got into my car, holding those papers in my hand, one thought settled in my mind with quiet, undeniable clarity. I wasn't going to pretend this hadn't happened. And I wasn't going to let it go. Not this time. I didn't call Rachel that day. I didn't text her. I didn't leave a message. I didn't even open the conversation thread on my phone. Instead, I drove home in silence, the envelope from the bank resting on the passenger seat beside me like something fragile or dangerous. Because that's what it felt like now. Not just information, but truth. And truth, once you hold it in your hands, changes everything. When I got home, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the driveway with the engine turned off, staring at the front door of my own house like I was about to walk into a different life than the one I had left that morning. For a long time, I just sat there. I thought about calling Maggie. I thought about crying. I thought about confronting Rachel immediately, demanding answers, demanding explanations, demanding something. But none of those thoughts felt right, because deep down I already knew something that scared me more than the theft itself. If I confronted her right away, she would lie, and I wasn't ready to hear that. So instead, I did something I had never done before. I stayed quiet. I went inside, set the envelope on the kitchen table, and made myself a cup of tea out of habit more than anything else. My hands moved automatically, muscle memory guiding me through each step, even as my mind felt distant and heavy. I sat down and looked at the papers again. 2 transactions, 2 deliberate decisions, and somewhere in between those 2 clicks, my daughter chose herself over me. I closed my eyes. Then finally I reached for my phone and called Maggie. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Paula. Everything okay? I hesitated. No, I said. That was all it took. I'm coming over, she said immediately. You don't have to, I'm already grabbing my keys. That was Maggie. Steady, loyal, the kind of friend who doesn't ask permission to show up when you need her. She arrived 15 minutes later, walking in without knocking the way she always had. One look at my face and her expression changed. What happened? She asked, setting her purse down. I didn't trust my voice right away, so I handed her the papers instead. She took them, her eyes scanning quickly. At first, her brow furrowed, then her lips pressed together. And finally, she let out a slow breath that carried more anger than I had expected. Paula, she said quietly, this wasn't a mistake. I know, I replied. Did you talk to her? No. Maggie looked up at me sharply. Why not? I stared at the table for a moment before answering. Because I already know what she's going to say. And what's that she didn't do it? Or that it wasn't a big deal? Or that she meant to tell me later? I shook my head slightly. I don't want excuses right now. I want clarity. Maggie studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. You're thinking, she said. Yes. And that scares me a little, she added, with a faint, humorless smile. It should, I said softly. There was a long pause. Paula, Maggie said carefully, you can't protect her from this. I looked up at her. I'm not trying to protect her, I said. Then what are you doing? I hesitated. I'm trying to understand how far she's willing to go. Maggie leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. You think this isn't the end of it? No, I said. I think this is just what I've caught. The room went quiet again. Maggie shook her head slowly. That girl has no idea who she's dealing with. I didn't respond to that, because the truth was, neither did I. That evening, right on time, Rachel came over. She didn't knock either. She rarely did. She walked in like she always had, calling out, Mom, you home? In the kitchen, I replied, keeping my voice steady. She appeared a moment later, smiling, holding 2 coffee cups. I brought your favorite, she said, setting one down in front of me. Caramel latte, extra foam. I looked at the cup. For a split second, something inside me twisted. This small gesture, thoughtful, familiar, was the kind of thing that used to make me feel loved. Now it felt different, calculated. Thank you, I said, meeting her eyes. She sat down across from me, completely at ease. Relaxed, comfortable, like nothing had happened. How was your day? She asked casually. I studied her face. There was no hesitation, no nervousness, no guilt, just normal. It was fine, I said. She nodded, taking a sip of her drink. Good. I was thinking maybe this weekend we could go out somewhere. You've been cooped up too much lately. Cooped up. The word lingered in my mind. I'm fine here, I replied. Rachel shrugged lightly. Well, still. It'd be nice to get you out. Maybe we can go shopping or something. Shopping? I almost smiled at that. Almost. Instead, I leaned back slightly, watching her. Rachel, I said gently, can I ask you something? Of course, she said without hesitation. Do you ever worry about money? The question seemed to catch her slightly off guard, but only for a second. Not really, she said with a small laugh. I mean, sure, sometimes. But you can't live your whole life stressing over every dollar, Mom. I nodded slowly. I suppose not. She leaned forward, resting her arms on the table. Honestly, I think people our age, well, your age, tend to worry too much about that stuff. Like, what's the point of having money if you're too scared to enjoy it? I held her gaze. And what do you think enjoying it looks like? I asked. She smiled, almost playfully. Treating yourself. Living a little. Not acting like every expense is the end of the world. There it was. Not guilt. Not even defensiveness. Just justification. I felt something inside me settle into place. A quiet, heavy certainty. And you think that applies to everyone? I asked. Pretty much, she said. Especially family. I mean, we're all in this together, right? Together. The word echoed in my mind, hollow now. I nodded again slowly. Yes, I said. Together. She smiled, satisfied, and reached for her coffee again. And in that moment, I realized something that changed everything. Rachel didn't think she had done anything wrong. Not really. In her mind, she hadn't stolen from me. She had taken from something she believed she already had a right to. And that was more dangerous than guilt. Because guilt can be corrected. But entitlement, that runs deeper. I picked up my coffee, taking a small sip, letting the warmth settle in my hands, and as I sat there across from my daughter, watching her, listening to her, understanding her in a way I never had before, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to let her keep talking, keep acting, keep believing she had gotten away with it, because the more comfortable she felt, the more the truth would reveal itself, and when it did, I would be ready. A few days later, Rachel invited me to lunch. "Just us," she said over the phone, her voice bright, almost cheerful. "There's this new place downtown I've been wanting to try. You'll love it." I almost said no. Not because I didn't want to see her, but because I wasn't sure I could sit across from her and pretend everything was normal. Not after what I knew. Not after what she had done. But then I remembered what I had decided. I needed to see how far this went. So I agreed. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place Rachel loved, modern, polished, filled with soft lighting and people dressed like they had somewhere important to be afterward. It wasn't my kind of place, but I had been there once before, years ago, when my husband was still alive. Back then it felt like a special occasion. Now it felt like a stage. Rachel was already there when I arrived, seated by the window. She looked radiant, perfectly put together. Her hair styled, her makeup flawless, her outfit carefully chosen to look effortless in a way that clearly took effort. And then I saw it. The handbag. She had placed it on the table right beside her plate, angled just enough for anyone walking by to notice. It was unmistakable. Sleek, structured, the kind of luxury item that didn't whisper wealth, it announced it. For a moment, I just stood there looking at her. My daughter, the same child who used to draw me pictures with crayons and tape them to the fridge, now sitting in a restaurant proudly displaying something she had taken from me. "Mom," she called, waving me over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I forced myself to move, to smile back, to sit down like nothing inside me had shifted. "You look nice," I said. "Thank you," she replied, clearly pleased. "I've been trying to put more effort into my look lately." I nodded, glancing briefly at the handbag. "I can see that." Her smile widened slightly, as if she had been waiting for that. "Oh, this," she said, casually touching the bag. "Kevin surprised me with it." The lie came so easily, so smoothly. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's quite a surprise," I said. "I know, right?" she laughed. "I didn't expect it either. But he said I deserved something special." Deserved. The word echoed in my mind. I'm glad he thinks that, I replied softly. A waiter approached and we ordered our meals. Rachel spoke easily, filling the space with conversation stories about friends, about Lily's school, about things she had seen online. She laughed often, leaning forward completely at ease, and I listened, not just to her words, but to everything underneath them. There was no hesitation, no guilt, no flicker of discomfort. If anything, she seemed proud. Halfway through the meal, she leaned back slightly and glanced around the restaurant. "See this place?" she said. "This is what I'm talking about. This is the kind of life I want." I followed her gaze. People talking, laughing, dressed in expensive clothes, sipping wine like it was water. "And what kind of life is that?" I asked. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. "A good one," she said, "a comfortable one, where you don't have to worry about every little thing." I nodded slowly. "And how do you plan to get there?" I asked. She smiled again, but this time there was something sharper in it. "You just make it happen," she said. "You take opportunities when they come." Opportunities. I folded my hands together on the table. "And if those opportunities belong to someone else?" I asked quietly. For the first time she hesitated, just for a second, but it was there. Then she shrugged, brushing it off. "Mom, everything is connected," she said. "We're family. It's not like things are separate between us." There it was again. That word. Family. I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "So you think what's mine is yours?" She laughed lightly, as if I had misunderstood her. "No, not like that," she said quickly. "I just mean, we help each other. We share. That's what family does." I held her gaze. "And do you think you've been helping me?" I asked. Her expression shifted slightly, confusion, maybe irritation. "Of course I have," she said. "I've been checking on you, helping with your accounts, making sure everything's organized. You'd be lost without me sometimes, Mom." Lost. The word stung more than I expected. "I see," I said. She leaned forward again, her tone softening. "Look, Mom," she said, "I know you're used to doing everything on your own, but you don't have to anymore. You have me." I almost laughed. not because it was funny, but because of how perfectly she had convinced herself of this version of reality. In her mind, she wasn't taking, she was entitled. She reached for her handbag again, adjusting it slightly, almost unconsciously, drawing attention to it. I just think she continued that after everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed, I deserve to enjoy my life a little. Everything she's sacrificed. I let the silence stretch for a moment. And what exactly have you sacrificed? I asked. She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Well, a lot, she said vaguely. I mean, raising Lily, managing the house, dealing with Kevin's unpredictable work. It's not easy. No, I agreed. It isn't. She seemed relieved by my agreement, taking another sip of her drink. And you think that gives you the right to? What I asked gently. Take what you need, her eyes flickered again. I didn't say that, she replied, her tone tightening slightly. You didn't have to, I said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt different now, heavier, more honest. But then, just as quickly, she smiled again, resetting the moment, smoothing it over. Mom, she said lightly, you're overthinking this. You always do that. Overthinking. Another dismissal. Another way of telling me that what I felt didn't matter. I looked at her then, really looked at her. And for the first time, I didn't see my daughter. Not the one I raised. Not the one I remembered. I saw a woman who had learned how to justify anything that made her feel better. And that realization hurt more than the money ever could. But it also gave me something else. Clarity. I picked up my glass, taking a slow sip. You're right, I said. She smiled, relieved. I know I am. I set the glass down gently. I do tend to overthink things, I continued. Maybe I should just relax a little more. Her smile widened. Exactly, she said. That's all I'm saying. I nodded. Maybe I will. And in that moment, she believed me. She believed she had reassured me. She believed the conversation was over. She believed everything was fine. But inside, something had already shifted completely. Because now I understood. This wasn't about a mistake. It wasn't about desperation. It wasn't even about the money. It was about who she had chosen to become. And once I saw that clearly, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. That night I didn't cry. I thought I might. I thought that once I was alone, once the quiet settled back into the walls of my home, everything I had been holding in would finally spill out. But it didn't. Instead, I felt something else. Focus. It was a strange feeling, cold, steady, almost unfamiliar. Like I had stepped out of the role I had been playing my entire life and into something sharper, something more aware. For years, I had reacted to things emotionally. As a mother, that's what you do. You forgive quickly. You explain away behavior. You protect, even when you shouldn't. But this time, I wasn't reacting. I was thinking. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had once trusted Rachel to help me, and spread out the papers Harold had given me. Transaction records, dates, amounts, details. I studied them carefully. 2 transfers. Not rushed. Not careless. Planned. Whoever did this had known exactly what they were doing, how much to take, when to take it, how to avoid raising suspicion. Rachel hadn't just crossed a line. She had calculated her way across it. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands in my lap. All right, I murmured to myself. Then we do this properly. The next morning I called Harold. Good morning, Mrs. Gray, he answered. I need your help, I said. Of course. I want to make sure everything is secure. Completely secure. There was a pause, then a shift in his tone, more serious now. Understood. Let's go through everything step by step. For the next hour, we worked through every detail. My passwords were changed, every single one. All linked devices were removed from my accounts. Notifications were activated for any future activity. Access permissions were locked down. Harold was thorough, and I appreciated that. Is there anything else you'd like to do, he asked when we finished. I hesitated. Yes, I said. I want documentation, everything, in case I need to take this further. He didn't ask questions. I'll prepare a full report for you, he said. Thank you. When I hung up, I sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle again. This wasn't something I ever imagined I'd have to prepare for. But here I was, preparing. That afternoon I called Maggie. Well, she asked the moment she picked up. What's the plan? I'm not confronting her yet, I said. Maggie sighed. Paula, listen to me, I said more firmly than I intended. I need her to feel safe, comfortable. I need her to believe she got away with it. There was a pause. And why exactly, Maggie asked. Because people reveal more when they think they're untouchable. Another pause. Then a quiet, impressed exhale. You've been thinking. Yes, I said. And I don't think I like where this is going, she added. You will, I replied softly. Eventually, that evening I found myself thinking about something Rachel had said at lunch. Her birthday. She had mentioned it casually, but I knew my daughter well enough to understand what that meant. Rachel didn't do anything casually when it came to appearances. If she was talking about her birthday, it meant she was planning something. Something big. The next day I called her. Mom, she answered, cheerful as ever. What's up? I was thinking about your birthday, I said. There was a slight pause, surprise maybe. Oh, she said. You don't have to worry about that. I want to, I replied. You deserve something nice. There it was again, that word. Deserve. But this time I was the one using it. Her tone softened immediately. That's sweet, Mom, she said. I was actually planning a dinner. Just something small. A few friends. I'd love to help, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. Really, she asked. Of course, I said. It's your birthday. I could almost hear her smile through the phone. That would be amazing, she said. I mean, it's been a little stressful trying to organize everything. I understand, I replied. Let me take some of that off your plate. And just like that, she let me in. Not cautiously. Not suspiciously. Eagerly. That told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few days, Rachel and I spoke often about the dinner. She had a vision. A specific restaurant. A certain guest list. A particular kind of atmosphere. It has to look right, she said more than once. I noticed that phrase, not feel right. Look right. That was what mattered to her. Meanwhile, I began quietly putting things into place. I organized the reservation. I spoke with the restaurant manager. I made sure I understood the layout of the room, the seating, the lighting, the flow of the evening, and all the while I kept my voice warm, supportive, cooperative. Rachel didn't question it. Why would she? In her mind, everything was exactly as it should be. Her mother was helping, her life was on track, her choices had no consequences. But behind that illusion, I was building something else entirely. One afternoon, Maggie came over again, watching me move around the kitchen with a kind of focused calm she wasn't used to seeing in me. You're scaring me a little, she said. Why? I asked. Because you're not angry, she replied. I smiled faintly. Oh, I am, I said. Very much so. Then where is it? She asked. Right where it needs to be, I answered. She studied me for a moment. What are you planning to do, Paula? I paused, then looked at her. I'm not going to scream at her, I said. Good, Maggie muttered. I'm not going to beg her to understand. Also good. I'm going to show her. Maggie's eyes narrowed slightly. Show her what? The truth, I said simply. And how exactly are you planning to do that? I walked over to the table and picked up a folder I had started putting together. Inside were copies of everything, bank statements, transaction records, dates and times, printed confirmation of the boutique purchase, and one more thing, a blank sheet of paper. I'm going to let her build her moment, I said. What does that mean? Maggie asked. It means I'm going to let her stand in front of everyone she cares about and show them exactly who she thinks she is. Maggie's expression shifted slowly, and then she asked, I placed the folder back down, and then I'm going to show them who she really is. The room fell silent. For a long moment, Maggie didn't say anything. Then quietly she said, That's going to break her. I looked down at my hands. No, I said. She broke something first. Maggie exhaled slowly. And you think this will fix it? I shook my head. No, I said. I think this will stop it. Another silence. Then Maggie nodded slowly. Well, she said, if you're going to do this, you're not doing it alone. I looked up at her. I know, I said. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt ready. Not emotional, not reactive. Ready. Because the truth was no longer something I was afraid of. It was something I was going to use. In the days leading up to Rachel's birthday dinner, I found myself thinking less about the money and more about the years. It's strange how betrayal works. At first, it feels like a single moment, a sharp, painful event you can point to, a transfer, a lie. a decision. But then, as the shock settles, something else begins to unfold. You start looking backward. You start asking yourself questions you should have asked long ago. And suddenly that one moment doesn't feel isolated anymore. It feels like a pattern you refuse to see. I spent a lot of time sitting in my living room watching the late afternoon sunlight stretch across the floor, remembering things I had once dismissed. Rachel rolling her eyes when I talked about budgeting. Rachel making little jokes about how old-fashioned I was. Rachel borrowing money once or twice and never quite mentioning it again. At the time, I told myself it was normal, that children go through phases, that she would grow out of it. But she hadn't grown out of it. She had grown into it. And I had helped her do it. That was the hardest part to admit. Not just that she had taken something from me, but that I had spent years quietly teaching her that she could, by forgiving too quickly, by explaining things away, by choosing peace over truth. I wasn't just hurt. I was responsible for part of the environment that made this possible. That realization sat heavy in my chest, not as guilt, but as clarity. One afternoon, Lily came over after school. Rachel had dropped her off quickly, too quickly, like she had somewhere else to be. Lily walked into the house with her backpack dragging slightly behind her, her small shoulders slumped in a way that didn't belong on a child. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, opening my arms. She came to me immediately, hugging me tightly. "Hi, Grandma." There was something different in her voice, quieter. I pulled back slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Everything okay?" she hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." It wasn't convincing, but I didn't push right away. Instead, I led her into the kitchen and started preparing a snack, something simple, peanut butter and apple slices the way she liked it. She sat at the table watching me in silence. After a few minutes, she spoke. "Grandma, yes, honey." She traced her finger along the edge of the table, not looking up. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She hesitated again. Then very quietly she asked, "Do adults get in trouble for stealing?" The knife in my hand paused mid-cut. For a second, the room felt completely still. "What makes you ask that?" I said gently. She shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. "I don't know. We talked about it at school. Like, if someone takes something that doesn't belong to them." I set the knife down slowly. "Well," I said, choosing my words carefully, "yes." "They do. Always?" she asked. "Usually," I replied. "Why?" She picked at the edge of her sleeve. "Even if they say sorry," there it was. The question that didn't come from a classroom. The question that came from somewhere much closer to home. I walked over and sat across from her. "Lily," I said softly, saying sorry is important, but it doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't make it right. She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were searching. "So, they still have to fix it?" "Yes," I said. "They do." She nodded slowly, like she was trying to understand something bigger than her years. "Okay," she whispered. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she reached for her apple slices, eating quietly. But I couldn't stop thinking about her question. Not just what she asked, but why she asked it. Children don't ask those kinds of questions without a reason. They see more than we think. They understand more than we realize. And in that moment, something shifted inside me again. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what Lily was learning. About what she would grow up believing was acceptable. Because if I stayed silent, if I let this pass without consequence, what would that teach her? That love means tolerating anything that family can take from you without accountability. That saying sorry is enough to erase harm. No, I couldn't let that be the lesson. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to the living room to watch television, I sat alone at the kitchen table again. The folder was in front of me, the evidence, the truth. And beside it, the blank sheet of paper I had been staring at for days. I picked up a pen. For a long moment, I didn't write anything. I just sat there thinking about Rachel as a little girl, about the woman she had become, about the line between loving someone and allowing them to hurt you. Then slowly, I began to write, not as a speech, not as an accusation, but as something else, a record, a reflection, a truth she couldn't interrupt or twist. I wrote about the nights I stayed up worrying about bills when she was young, about the things I went without so she could have what she needed, about the pride I felt watching her grow into adulthood, and the quiet disappointment I never spoke out loud when I saw her losing herself in things that didn't matter. I wrote about the trust I had placed in her, The way I never questioned her intentions, the way I believed completely that she would never take advantage of me. And finally, I wrote about the moment I realized she had. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in truth. When I finished, I set the pen down. My hands were steady. My heart was not calm exactly, but certain. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about something much deeper. Accountability, truth, and the kind of love that doesn't hide from either. That night, as I checked the final details for the dinner, confirming the reservation, reviewing the seating arrangement, making sure everything was exactly as Rachel had envisioned, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not relief, but purpose. Because for the first time in a long time, I was choosing something different, something harder, but something right. And as I turned off the lights and prepared for bed, one thought stayed with me, clear and unwavering. Whatever happened next, it wouldn't just change Rachel. It would change me too. The week of Rachel's birthday arrived faster than I expected. Everything was already in motion. Reservations confirmed, guest list finalized, timing arranged down to the minute. From the outside, it looked like I was doing exactly what any loving mother would do, helping her daughter prepare for a special night. And that was the part that made it so easy. Rachel never questioned me. Not once. If anything, she seemed pleased. "Mom, I don't know what I would do without you," she said one afternoon as we sat together reviewing the final details. I smiled. "You won't have to find out," I replied. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her expression soft, almost affectionate. "Seriously," she said, "you've been amazing this week. Amazing." The word lingered in the air between us. I wondered briefly what she would think of me by the end of the night, but I pushed that thought aside. Because this wasn't about how she would see me, it was about making sure she finally saw herself. Over the next few days, I moved carefully, deliberately. Every step had a purpose. I returned to the bank once more to pick up the finalized documents Harold had prepared. Everything was organized neatly, transaction records, account access logs, confirmation of the merchant payments, clean, undeniable. "Are you sure you want to handle this publicly?" Harold asked gently as he handed me the folder. I met his eyes. "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "Then I recommend you stay calm," he said. "Facts speak louder when they're delivered without emotion." "I understand," I replied. And I did. That was the key. Not anger, not chaos, control. Back home, I laid everything out again on the table, the documents, the timeline, and the letter. I read the letter one more time, my eyes moving over each sentence carefully. There was no accusation in it, no shouting, no bitterness, just truth, raw and clear. When I finished, I folded it neatly and placed it into a simple envelope. No name on the outside. It didn't need one. Maggie came over later that evening, watching me as I arranged everything into a single folder. "You've gone very quiet," she said. "I've gone very clear," I corrected. She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "Walk me through it," she said. I looked up at her. "I'm not interrupting her," I began. "I'm not embarrassing her for the sake of embarrassment." "Then what are you doing?" Maggie asked. "I'm waiting," I said. "For what? For the moment when she builds herself up the highest?" Maggie frowned slightly, and then I let the truth meet her there. Maggie let out a slow breath. "That's going to hit hard," she said. "Yes," I replied. "And you're okay with that?" I held her gaze. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm okay with what happens if I don't do it." She nodded slowly. "Fair enough." The night before the dinner, Rachel called me again. "Everything's set right?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "The reservation is confirmed. The table is arranged exactly the way you wanted." "Perfect," she said, her excitement clear. "I want this to be special, I know," I replied. There was a pause. Then her voice softened slightly. "Thank you, Mom," she said, "for everything." I closed my eyes for just a second. "You're welcome," I said. After we hung up, I sat there in silence for a while. That was the hardest part. Not the planning, not the preparation, but moments like that. Moments where she sounded like the daughter I remembered, where everything almost felt normal again. But I couldn't let that distract me, because the truth hadn't changed, and neither had what needed to happen. The day of the dinner arrived with a strange kind of stillness. I woke up early, not because I had to, but because my mind wouldn't let me stay asleep. There was no panic, No racing thoughts. Just awareness. I moved through my morning slowly. Coffee, breakfast, a quiet moment by the window, and then finally I dressed. I chose something simple but elegant, not flashy, not attention-seeking, just enough to feel composed. This wasn't about standing out, it was about standing firm. Before I left the house, I picked up the folder. For a moment, I just held it in my hands. Everything was in there. The proof, the truth, the turning point. I placed it carefully into my bag. Then I paused. Looking around my home, the place I had built, protected, maintained for years. The place that had almost been quietly taken from me without my knowledge. A deep breath filled my chest. "I'm ready," I said softly to myself. When I arrived at the restaurant, everything was already being prepared. The lighting was soft, warm. The tables were set beautifully, exactly the way Rachel had imagined. I spoke briefly with the manager, confirming the timing once more. Everything was in place. Maggie arrived shortly after, giving me a long look the moment she saw me. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "You don't look nervous." "I'm not." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right," she said. "Then, let's do this." Guests began arriving one by one. Friends, colleagues, people who knew Rachel in the version of herself she presented to the world. They laughed, greeted each other, filled the space with light conversation and easy smiles. And then, Rachel walked in. She looked exactly the way she wanted to be seen. Confident, radiant, admired. The handbag was there, of course, placed perfectly at her side, like a symbol. She spotted me immediately, her face lighting up. "Mom," she said, walking over and hugging me. "You look beautiful," I said. "So do you," she replied. And for a brief second as I held her, I felt something inside me tighten. Because she was still my daughter, no matter what she had done, no matter what was about to happen. But then she pulled back, smiling already, turning her attention to greeting her guests. And just like that, the moment passed. I took my seat quietly, watching as the evening unfolded exactly as expected. Rachel moved through the room effortlessly, laughing, talking, basking in the attention. Kevin stood nearby, less comfortable but playing his part. Everything was perfect, exactly the way she wanted it, and I let it happen. I didn't interrupt. I didn't interfere. I waited. Because I knew. The higher she climbed in that moment, the further she would fall when the truth finally reached her. And this time, I wasn't going to stop it. By the time everyone was seated, the room had settled into that comfortable hum of celebration, the kind that feels warm on the surface but underneath is built entirely on appearances. Laughter echoed lightly across the table. Glasses clinked. Someone complimented the decor. Another guest leaned in to admire Rachel's outfit, her hair, her makeup, everything carefully curated to reflect the life she wanted people to believe she had. And of course, the handbag. It sat beside her like a centerpiece. Rachel didn't just carry it, she positioned it, tilted just enough for the logo to catch the light, close enough to her plate that every person at the table would notice it without her having to mention it. But she did mention it, more than once. "Oh, this," she said when one of her friends asked. "Kevin surprised me with it. I still can't believe it." Her tone was light, playful, but underneath there was something else. Pride. A quiet satisfaction in being seen. Kevin, sitting beside her, gave a small, tight smile. Not quite convincing. Not quite comfortable. His eyes flickered briefly in my direction, then away again. He knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough. I watched him for a moment, then shifted my gaze back to Rachel. She was glowing, thriving even, as if this night was the confirmation she had been waiting for, that she had finally become the version of herself she wanted the world to see. And for a while I let her have it. I smiled when appropriate, nodded during conversations, answered questions politely, played my part, because timing matters. And this moment was still hers. Dinner was served. Conversation flowed easily, moving from light topics to personal stories. People shared memories, laughed at old jokes, spoke about work, about life, about things that felt important in the moment but would be forgotten by morning. Rachel leaned into it all effortlessly. She had always been good at that, at reading a room, at knowing exactly what to say to keep people engaged, impressed, comfortable. At one point, she stood slightly lifting her glass. "Can I say something?" she asked. The table quieted almost immediately. Of course it did. This was her moment. "I just wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice warm, confident. "It really means a lot to me to have people in my life who support me, who care about me." She paused briefly, glancing around the table. "And especially my family," she continued, "because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. Loyalty, love, being there for each other no matter what." The words hung in the air, beautiful, polished, carefully chosen. I felt something inside me tighten, not with anger, but with something deeper, recognition. This was the version of the story she believed, or at least the version she wanted everyone else to believe. She turned slightly, her eyes landing on me. "And my mom," she said, smiling, "who has always been there for me, who has always taught me the importance of generosity and kindness." There it was, the final piece, the moment she built herself up completely, the moment she placed herself exactly where she wanted to be, admired, respected, untouchable. Around the table, people nodded, smiling. A few murmured agreement. "That's beautiful," someone said. "You're lucky to have each other," another added. Rachel's smile widened slightly. "Yes," she said, "I really am." And that was when I knew. This was the moment. Not before, not later, now. I placed my napkin gently on the table. Slowly, deliberately. Then I stood. The movement was small, but it shifted something in the room immediately. Rachel's eyes flicked toward me, a hint of confusion crossing her face. "Mom," she said lightly, "did you want to add something?" I looked at her, really looked at her, at the confidence in her posture, at the ease in her expression, at the complete absence of doubt. "Yes," I said. My voice was calm, steady, clear. I would. The room grew quiet. Not tense yet, just attentive. People turned slightly in their chairs, curious. Rachel smiled, gesturing toward me, as if inviting me into her moment. "Of course," she said. "Go ahead." I nodded. "I want to thank you too, Rachel," I began. Her smile softened, pleased. "For what?" she asked lightly. "For teaching me something important," I said. There was a slight shift in the air. Subtle, but noticeable. Rachel tilted her head slightly. "Oh," she said. "What's that?" I reached into my bag, slowly, carefully, and pulled out the folder. I didn't rush. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at anyone else in the room. Just her. "You taught me," I continued, "that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones we understand the least." The smile on her face faltered just slightly. "Mom," she said, a quiet warning in her tone. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder, removed the first document, placed it gently on the table in front of her. "This," I said calmly, "is my pension account statement from last week." She didn't look at it. Not immediately. Instead, she laughed softly, shaking her head. "Okay, I don't understand." And these, I continued, placing 2 more pages beside it, "are the transaction records from 3 days ago." Now she looked. Just a glance. Just enough. Her expression didn't change right away. But I saw it. That flicker, that recognition. I don't know what this is supposed to transfer, I said, still calm, timed carefully. Just under the alert limit. The room had gone completely silent now. No one was smiling anymore. No one was speaking. They were watching. Rachel's fingers moved slightly on the table, her posture tightening. "Mom, maybe this isn't the time," and this I said, placing 1 more paper down, "is the merchant confirmation. A luxury boutique." Her breath caught, just slightly, but enough. "I think you know which one," I added. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Rachel stared at the papers in front of her, her face pale now, the color draining slowly but visibly. "Mom," she said again, but this time her voice was different. Not confident, not controlled, uncertain. And that was when the room shifted completely, because the truth had arrived. And it wasn't going anywhere. For a moment, no one breathed, the kind of silence that settles in a room when something irreversible has just been said, when the air itself seems to pause, waiting to see what happens next. Rachel stared at the papers in front of her, not reading them. Not yet, just staring. Her fingers hovered over the edges like touching them might make everything real in a way she wasn't ready for. Then she laughed, a small, sharp sound that didn't belong in that room anymore. Mom, what is this? She said, shaking her head as if she could dismiss it with a tone alone. This is crazy. No one joined her laughter. No one even smiled, because everyone had seen it. That flicker in her eyes. That moment of recognition she couldn't hide. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply stood there, calm, waiting. Rachel picked up the first sheet, glancing at it quickly, her expression tightening. "This doesn't mean anything," she said a little too fast. "You're misunderstanding something." "Am I?" I asked quietly. She swallowed, placing the paper back down. "Yes," she said more firmly now. "You are." "Then help me understand," I replied. Her eyes flashed. "This isn't the place for this," she said, her voice sharpening. "We can talk about it later." "Later," I repeated softly. "Yes," she snapped. "Not here. Not in front of everyone." I looked around the table briefly. Every face was turned toward us. Some shocked, some uncomfortable, some already forming their judgments. Then I looked back at her. "You spoke about family," I said calmly. "About loyalty. About generosity." Her jaw tightened, and I thought I continued this would be the perfect place to talk about what those words really mean. Her chair scraped slightly against the floor as she shifted. "Mom, stop," she said under her breath. But I didn't stop, because I had waited too long for this moment to let it slip away now. 3 days ago, I said, my voice still steady, my pension account was accessed. 2 transfers were made. Nearly everything I had saved for my basic needs was taken. Gasps, soft, barely audible, moved through the room. Rachel shook her head quickly. "I didn't do that," she said. "I don't know what you're talking about." The lie came again. Reflexive. Immediate. But weaker now. I nodded slowly. "That's interesting," I said. I reached into the folder again and pulled out another page. "This document shows the device used to authorize those transactions," I continued. "A device that has accessed my account before." Rachel didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. Kevin shifted in his seat beside her, his face pale, his eyes darting between us. "Rachel," he murmured. She ignored him. "This is ridiculous," she said louder now, trying to reclaim control. "You're accusing me of stealing from you. In front of everyone, I'm not accusing you," I said. I placed the final document on the table. "I'm showing you." Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. This time, she read it. Really read it. And when she did, everything changed. Her shoulders stiffened. Her breath caught. Her eyes moved quickly across the page, searching for something, anything that could undo what was written there. But there was nothing. Because the truth doesn't change when you look at it differently. "Say something," one of her friends whispered softly. Rachel didn't look up. She couldn't. Not yet. I think I said gently, "You should also read this." I reached into the folder one last time and took out the envelope. The letter. I placed it in front of her. She stared at it like it was something dangerous. "Open it," I said. She hesitated. Then slowly she did. The sound of the paper unfolding seemed louder than it should have been. She began to read. At first her expression was tight, defensive, guarded. But as her eyes moved down the page, that changed. Her lips parted slightly, her brow furrowed, and then just barely her expression cracked. Because the letter wasn't angry, it wasn't accusing, it was honest. I had written about everything. About the years I spent raising her, about the sacrifices she never saw, about the trust I gave her without hesitation. And the moment that trust was broken, not with shouting, not with blame, but with truth. By the time she reached the end, her hands were shaking. She lowered the paper slowly. For a long moment she didn't speak. No one did. And then, "Why would you do this?" she asked. Her voice was quiet. Not angry. Not yet. Just small. The question hung in the air. Not what did I do, not how did you find out, but why would you expose me? I felt something in my chest tighten, but I didn't let it show. "Why would you take it?" I asked. Her head snapped up. "That's not the same thing," she said quickly. "No," I replied. Her eyes filled not with tears of regret, but with something sharper. "Humiliation." "You're embarrassing me," she said. The words landed heavily. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably. "Embarrassing you?" I repeated softly. "Yes," she said, her voice rising now. "You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to make me look bad." I held her gaze. You didn't need my help with that, I said quietly. The words cut deeper than any raised voice ever could. She flinched, actually flinched, and for the first time, the tears came. Not gentle, not quiet, but sudden and overwhelming. Do you have any idea what you've done? She demanded, her voice breaking. Yes, I said. I do. She shook her head, her hands gripping the edge of the table. You've ruined this night, she said. No, I replied. You ruined it the moment you decided my survival mattered less than your handbag. The words settled into the room like something final, something undeniable. Kevin leaned forward slightly, his face pale. Rachel, is this true? He asked. She didn't answer, not right away. She just sat there breathing unevenly, her eyes darting between the papers, the letter, and the faces around her. And in that silence, everything she had built began to collapse. Because the truth doesn't just expose what happened, it exposes who you are. And in that moment, everyone in that room could finally see her. Clearly, completely, without the illusion. And there was no way back from that. Rachel's crying didn't soften the room. If anything, it made everything sharper. Because there was something missing in it. Not remorse, not at first, but fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of losing control of the story she had carefully built around herself. Her shoulders shook, her breath uneven, but when she finally looked up again, the expression in her eyes wasn't broken, it was defensive. How could you do this to me? She demanded, her voice trembling but rising. In front of everyone, there it was. Not what she had done, but what I had done to her. I let the silence sit for a moment before I answered. How could I do this? I repeated softly. Yes, she snapped. You humiliated me. You made me look like some kind of criminal. I held her gaze. You're not upset about what happened, I said quietly. You're upset that people know about it. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. That's not true, she said quickly. Then tell them, I replied. The room shifted again, all eyes on her, waiting. Rachel looked around the table, searching for something support maybe. A familiar face that would jump in, defend her, redirect the conversation. But no one did. Because the truth was already sitting there in black and white, and no one wanted to be the one to argue with it. She started, then stopped. Kevin leaned forward again, his voice quieter this time. Rachel, just tell the truth. She turned to him sharply. You don't understand, she said. Then help me understand, he replied. That same line, the same words I had used, but this time they landed differently. Because they were coming from someone who had trusted her in a different way. Her partner, her husband, and now, someone who wasn't sure who she really was. Rachel's breathing grew heavier. I was going to fix it, she said suddenly. The words spilled out quickly, like she had been holding them back and couldn't anymore. I wasn't just going to leave it like that. I just needed time. There it was, the first crack of truth. Not an apology, not responsibility, but justification. How? I asked. She blinked. What? How are you going to fix it? I repeated. I don't know yet, she said, her voice tightening. I would have figured it out. With what money? I asked calmly. She didn't answer. Because there was no answer. You didn't need it for rent, I continued. You didn't need it for food. You didn't need it for Lily. Her eyes flickered. So what did you need it for? I asked. Her gaze dropped to the handbag beside her. That was answer enough. It was just, she started, then stopped, frustration rising in her expression. It was just one thing. One thing, I echoed. Yes, she said louder now. Just one thing for me. Do you have any idea how hard it is to keep up? To not feel like you're falling behind everyone else? The words came faster now, sharper. You think it's easy, watching everyone else have more, do more, be more. I'm tired of feeling like I'm always the one who doesn't measure up. The room was silent again. But this time it wasn't just shock. It was something else. Understanding. Not agreement, but recognition. Because what she was saying wasn't entirely unfamiliar. Many people feel that pressure. That need to keep up. That quiet fear of not being enough. But what she did with that feeling, that was the difference. And you thought this would fix that? I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes red now, her voice breaking again. I just wanted to feel like I mattered, she said. For a brief moment, something in my chest softened. Because that part I understood. But understanding doesn't erase consequences. You do matter, I said gently. Not like that, she snapped. Not the way people see it. And that's what matters to you, I asked. She hesitated. Then quietly, yes. The honesty of it settled heavily in the room. Kevin leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. I can't believe this, he muttered. Rachel turned to him again. Oh, don't act surprised, she said bitterly. You knew things were tight. You just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't know you were stealing from your mother, he shot back. I wasn't stealing, she said quickly. I was going to pay it back. When he demanded, she didn't answer. Because again, there was no answer. I watched them for a moment, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everything that had been building under the surface for years. The tension, the denial, the choices no one wanted to confront. And now, they were all being forced into the open. One of Rachel's friends shifted uncomfortably. I think maybe we should give you guys some space, she said quietly. A few others nodded, standing slowly, unsure of where to look or what to say. Within moments, the table began to empty, not dramatically, not abruptly, just quietly. People leaving one by one, carrying the weight of what they had witnessed. Rachel watched them go, her expression shifting from anger to something else. Loss. Because this wasn't just about being exposed, it was about losing the image she had built. The admiration, the validation, the version of herself she had worked so hard to maintain, and it was all slipping away. Right in front of her. She turned back to me, her voice smaller now. You didn't have to do it like this, she said. Yes, I replied. I did. Tears slid down her face again, but this time, they were different. Less defensive. More uncertain. I'm your daughter, she said. I know, I answered. Then why would you hurt me like this? The question lingered, and for a moment, I let myself feel it. The weight of it. Because this wasn't easy. It wasn't something I wanted, but it was something that needed to happen. I'm not hurting you, I said softly. I'm showing you. She shook her head, her voice breaking again, showing me what I held her gaze. The truth, I said. And what happens when you see it? The room was almost empty now. Just the four of us. Me, Rachel, Kevin, and the silence between everything that had been said. Rachel looked down at the table, at the papers, at the letter, at the evidence of everything she had tried to hide, and for the first time since this began, she didn't argue. She didn't deny. She just sat there. And that silence, that was the real turning point. The restaurant was nearly empty by the time we stepped outside. The night air felt cooler than it should have, brushing against my skin in a way that made everything feel sharper, more real. The soft glow of the streetlights stretched across the pavement, quiet and indifferent to what had just happened inside. Rachel walked a few steps ahead of me, her shoulders tense, her movements quick and uneven. Kevin lingered behind for a moment, running his hands through his hair before following us out. No one spoke. Not until we reached the parking lot. Then Rachel turned. Abruptly. What was that? She demanded. Her voice wasn't as loud as before, but it was sharper, tighter, like everything she hadn't said inside was now pressing against the surface. I looked at her calmly. You know what it was, I said. No, she snapped. I don't. Because what you did in there, that wasn't necessary. Wasn't it? I asked. She threw her hands up. You could have talked to me privately. You could have handled this like a normal person. I held her gaze. I gave you that chance, I said. When she shot back, every time you came into my house and pretended nothing was wrong. Her expression faltered for just a second, then hardened again. I told you I was going to fix it, she said. With what I asked again, my voice steady. She clenched her jaw. I would have figured it out. That's not an answer. It's the best one I had, she snapped. Kevin stepped in slightly, his tone more controlled but no less strained. Rachel, just stop, he said. You're not making this better. She turned on him immediately. Oh, so now you're on her side, she said. I'm on the side of what actually happened, he replied. Her laugh was bitter this time. Of course you are. I watched them both quietly. The cracks were widening now, not just between Rachel and me, but in everything she had built around herself. Rachel, I said, bringing her attention back to me. She looked at me, her eyes still red, her breathing uneven. What she asked, This isn't about sides, I said. This is about what you did. She shook her head. No, she said. This is about what you did. I waited. You humiliated me, she continued. You made me look like a terrible person in front of everyone I know. I let her finish. Then I said quietly, I didn't make you anything. The words landed harder than I expected. She flinched slightly. You showed them something, I continued. Something that was already there. That's not fair, she said quickly. No, I replied. What's not fair is trusting someone completely and finding out they were using that trust against you. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. For a moment, the fight left her. Just for a moment. Then she looked away. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice quieter now. There it was, the question that mattered. Not anger, not denial, but uncertainty. I took a slow breath. I want you to take responsibility, I said. She frowned. I said I was going to fix it. That's not the same thing, I replied. She crossed her arms tightly. Then what has she asked? I stepped a little closer, not aggressively, just enough to make sure she heard me clearly. It means acknowledging what you did, I said. Not minimizing it, not explaining it away, not turning it into something smaller than it is. Her eyes flickered. And then she asked, and then you make it right, I said. She let out a short, humorless laugh. And how exactly do you expect me to do that? She asked. I didn't hesitate. You repay every dollar, I said. Her expression changed again, from defensive to shocked. You're serious, she said. Yes, I replied. That's a lot of money, she said. I know, I said. I can't just come up with that overnight, she added quickly. I'm not asking you to, I said. She stared at me. Then what are you asking, she said. A plan, I answered. In writing. She blinked. What, a repayment agreement, I said calmly. A clear schedule, a commitment you follow through on. Her mouth opened slightly. You want me to sign something, she asked. Yes. She shook her head immediately. That's ridiculous, she said. I'm your daughter, not. Exactly, I interrupted gently. And that's why I'm giving you the chance to handle this without involving anyone else. The meaning behind my words settled slowly. Her expression shifted again. This time there was something new in it. Fear. You wouldn't, she said. I held her gaze. If you don't take responsibility, I said quietly, I will have no choice. Kevin exhaled slowly beside her, clearly processing everything. Rachel, he said softer now, you need to think about this. She looked at him, then back at me. You're really going to do this? She asked. I already have, I replied. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read me, trying to find the hesitation she had always relied on. The softness, the willingness to bend. But it wasn't there. Not this time. I don't understand you, she said finally. That's okay, I replied. You don't have to. Another silence fell between us, heavier now, more grounded, because the truth had shifted from exposure to consequence. There's something else, I added. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What now? She asked. I've updated my accounts, I said. You no longer have access to anything. Her face tightened. And my will has been revised, I continued, as well as my power of attorney. That hit harder than anything else I had said, because it wasn't about money. It was about trust and the removal of it. You didn't have to go that far, she said. Yes, I replied. I did. Her shoulders dropped slightly, not in defeat, but in realization. For the first time, she was seeing the full impact of what she had done, not just the moment, but the aftermath. The change, the distance. What about Lily? She asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard, but only for a second. What about her? I said. She loves coming to see you, Rachel said. You're not going to punish her because of this, are you? The way she said it, like she was trying to shift the focus, was familiar. But I didn't take the bait. This has nothing to do with Lily, I said. She's welcome in my home, always. Rachel nodded slowly, relieved. But this, I added, has everything to do with you. She looked down. And this time, she didn't argue. I'll think about it, she said quietly. I nodded. That's all I'm asking. We stood there for a moment longer, the distance between us no longer physical but something deeper. Something that couldn't be closed with a hug or a simple apology. It would take time, effort, truth, and maybe, just maybe, change. Without another word, I turned and walked to my car. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel powerless. I felt steady, like I had finally drawn a line that couldn't be erased. The days after the dinner felt strangely quiet, not peaceful, just quiet in a way that made everything more noticeable. The ticking of the clock in my living room sounded louder. The hum of the refrigerator seemed constant. Even the creak of the floor beneath my steps carried a weight I hadn't felt before, because something had shifted. Not just between me and Rachel, but inside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for things to go wrong. I wasn't bracing myself for the next small disappointment I would quietly forgive. I was still. And that stillness made everything clearer. Rachel didn't call the next day, or the day after. That didn't surprise me. She needed time to process, time to react, time to decide what version of herself she was going to hold on to, the one that denied everything, or the one that finally faced it. Kevin, however, called 2 days later. "Paula," he said, his voice hesitant. "Yes," I replied. "Do you have a minute?" "I do." There was a pause. I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said, "for what I asked. For not seeing it sooner," he said. "Or maybe for seeing parts of it and not wanting to look too closely." I didn't respond right away, because that kind of honesty deserved space. "I had a feeling something wasn't right," he continued. "The spending, the way things didn't add up. But every time I brought it up, Rachel would shut it down. And I let it go." "Why?" I asked gently. He exhaled slowly. "Because it was easier," he admitted. "Because I didn't want to deal with what it might mean." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "That happens," I said. "Not anymore," he replied. There was something different in his voice now. Less uncertainty, more resolve. "I moved out for a few days," he added. That caught my attention. "You did?" "Yeah," he said. "I'm staying with my brother for now." I told Rachel I needed space. I leaned back slightly in my chair. "That couldn't have been easy," I said. "It wasn't," he replied. "But neither is pretending everything's fine when it's not." Another pause. "She's not taking it well," he added quietly. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. "Lily?" I asked. "She's okay," he said quickly. Confused, but okay. "She asked me a lot of questions." "Of course she did. And what did you tell her?" I asked. "The truth," he said. "Simple, direct, and exactly what she needed." "Thank you," I said. There was a brief silence. "I don't know what's going to happen next," Kevin admitted. "But I know things can't go back to the way they were." "No," I agreed. "They can't." When we hung up, I sat there for a while thinking. This was what truth does. It doesn't just expose one thing. It exposes everything connected to it. The weak spots, the things people avoided, the conversations no one wanted to have. And once those things are brought into the light, they don't disappear. They demand change. Later that afternoon, Lily came over again. This time she knocked. That alone told me something had changed. I opened the door and smiled. "Hey, sweetheart." "Hi, Grandma," she said softly. She stepped inside, her movements slower than usual. "Careful." I closed the door behind her. "How was school?" I asked. "Okay," she said. We walked into the kitchen together and I could feel it again, that quiet weight she carried. "Lily," I said gently, "do you want to talk about anything?" She hesitated, then nodded. We sat down at the table. She folded her hands in front of her, looking down. "Mom and Dad are fighting," she said. I kept my voice calm. "I'm sorry to hear that. They don't think I hear them," she continued. "But I do." I reached across the table, placing my hand over hers. "That must be hard," I said. She nodded. Then after a moment she asked, "Is it because of the money?" The question was direct, honest, and I knew I couldn't avoid it. "Yes," I said. She swallowed. "Did Mom really take it?" she asked. I paused. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to say it the right way. "Yes," I said gently. Lily looked down again, her eyes filling slightly. "Why?" she asked. I exhaled slowly. "Because she made a bad decision," I said. "Is she in trouble?" she asked. "She's facing consequences," I replied. Lily thought about that. Then she looked up at me. "Is that the same thing?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Not exactly," I said. "Trouble is what someone gives you. Consequences are what come from your choices." She nodded slowly. "That makes sense," she said. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked something that stayed with me long after she left. Do you still love her? She asked. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Yes, I said. Even after this, she asked. Yes, I repeated. She tilted her head slightly. Then why are you being so strict? She asked. I squeezed her hand gently. Because loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you, I said. She absorbed that quietly, then nodded. I think I understand, she said. And I believed her, because children understand more than we think. That evening, I received a message from Rachel. Not a call, not a long explanation, just a short text. I sold the bag. I stared at the screen for a moment, then another message came. I didn't get back what I paid. Of course she didn't. That's the thing about trying to buy something you haven't earned. It rarely holds its value. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there letting the words settle. This wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was something. A step. Small. Uncertain. But real. And for the first time since everything began, I felt something shift again. Not relief, not forgiveness, but possibility, because consequences had started to take shape, not just in words, but in actions. And that was where real change begins. The first payment arrived 2 weeks later. It wasn't much, a fraction of what Rachel had taken, but it was something real, not words, not excuses, not promises that floated in the air and disappeared the moment they became inconvenient, something tangible. I held the check in my hands for a long moment before setting it down on the table. There was no satisfaction in it, no sense of victory, just acknowledgement. She had started. That mattered. But what mattered more was what came with it. A note, folded carefully, almost cautiously, like she wasn't sure how it would be received. I opened it slowly. The handwriting was hers, familiar but somehow different now, less rushed, less careless. Mom, I know this isn't enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I'm trying. I'll send more next week. Rachel, no excuses. No justification. Just a statement. I read it twice. Then I folded it again and placed it beside the check. That evening, Maggie came over as she often did now. You look like you've been thinking, she said, into the kitchen. I have, I replied. She noticed the check on the table immediately. Well, she said, picking it up, I guess that's something. It is, I said. But she asked, raising an eyebrow. But it's just the beginning, I replied. She nodded, setting it back down. You heard from her, Maggie asked. Just that note. And how did it feel? I paused. Different, I said. Different how? Like she wasn't trying to convince me of anything, I explained. Just stating where she is. Maggie leaned against the counter, arms crossed. That sounds like progress, she said. It might be, I replied. But you're not convinced yet. No, I said simply, because I wasn't. Real change doesn't come from one action. It comes from consistency, from showing up again and again, even when it's uncomfortable. And Rachel had spent a long time choosing the easier path. One check didn't erase that. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Small payments, regular, on time, each one accompanied by a short message. Never long, never dramatic, just steady. And slowly I began to notice something else. Rachel wasn't the same when I saw her. The first time she came by after the dinner, she stood at the door for a moment before knocking. That alone told me everything. She waited. Until I opened it. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. There was no hug, no immediate warmth, just a quiet acknowledgement of where we were now. She stepped inside, looking around the house like she was seeing it differently, not as something familiar, but as something she had almost lost access to. How are you? She asked. I'm all right, I said. She nodded. I brought this, she said, handing me an envelope. Another payment. Thank you, I said. She hesitated, then added, I started working extra shifts. I looked at her. We're a retail store, she said, part-time, evenings. That surprised me. Rachel had never been someone who chose inconvenience. She avoided it whenever she could. But now, she was stepping into it. Good, I said. She nodded again. It's not what I'm used to, she admitted. I imagine it isn't, I replied. There was a small... Then she said something that stayed with me. It's strange, she said. Standing there all day watching people buy things they probably don't need. I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Oh yeah," she said, letting out a quiet breath. "You start to see it differently, like how easy it is to think something will make you feel better, and how quickly that feeling disappears." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because that realization, that was something she had to come to on her own. "I sold the bag," she added. "I know," I said. She nodded. "I lost a lot on it," she said. "I expected that," I replied. She gave a small, almost bitter smile. "Yeah, turns out things don't hold their value the way you think they will." "No," I said, "they don't." Another pause. Then she looked at me. Really looked. "I didn't do it because I needed it," she said. I waited. "I did it because I wanted people to think I was doing better than I was," she continued. There it was. The truth. Not wrapped in excuses. Not softened. Just honest. "I know," I said. She swallowed. "I've been thinking about that a lot," she added, "about why it mattered so much." And I asked. She hesitated, then said quietly, "Because I didn't feel like I was enough." The words landed heavily, not because they were surprising, but because she was finally saying them out loud. "And you thought that would fix it," I said. She nodded. "I thought if I looked like I had it all together, maybe I'd start to believe it too." I leaned back slightly. "And did it work?" She let out a small, humorless laugh. "No," she said, "not even a little." Silence settled between us. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was honest. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were simple, but they were different from anything she had said before. No defensiveness, no shifting blame, just responsibility. "I know," I replied. She looked at me, searching my face. "You're not going to say it back, are you?" she asked. "No," I said. She nodded slowly. "I didn't think so. But I hear you," I added. That seemed to matter. More than I expected. She took a small breath, then glanced toward the living room. "Can I see Lily later?" she asked. "Of course," I said. "She'd like that." Rachel nodded. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "Mom," she said. "Yes, I know this doesn't fix things," she said. "Not yet." "No," I agreed. "But I'm going to keep trying," she added. I held her gaze. "That's what matters," I said. She nodded once. Then she left. And as I stood there watching the door close behind her, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel until that moment. Not full forgiveness, not trust, but the beginning of something that might one day become both. Because for the first time, she wasn't asking to be seen differently. She was trying to become different. And that was where healing begins. Time has a way of settling things, not by erasing what happened, but by placing it where it belongs. Months passed. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. Rachel continued making payments. Every week. Sometimes small, sometimes slightly larger, depending on how many extra hours she had worked. She never missed one, not once. That consistency mattered more than any apology she could have repeated, because it wasn't about what she said anymore. It was about what she did. Kevin moved back home after a few weeks, but things between them were different, quieter, more deliberate. They started counseling, something Rachel would have dismissed before. Now she showed up to it. That too mattered. Lily continued to visit me often, sometimes with Rachel, sometimes without, and every time she walked through my door there was a lightness in her again, not because everything was perfect, but because things were honest. Children don't need perfection. They need truth they can trust. One afternoon, months after the dinner, Rachel came by again. She knocked, waited. I opened the door, and for a moment we just looked at each other, not as we used to, but not as we were at our worst either. Somewhere in between. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I replied. She stepped inside holding an envelope. Another payment. She handed it to me without a word. "Thank you," I said. She nodded. Then, instead of immediately stepping back or filling the silence with conversation, she stayed. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. "I do." We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where so much of this had begun. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, "I paid off the last of the balance." I looked at her. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded. "I double-checked everything. It's all there." I reached for the folder I had kept carefully updated over the months, flipping through the records. She was right. Every dollar. Repaid. I closed the folder slowly. All right, I said. That was it. No dramatic reaction, no emotional release, just acknowledgement, because the moment wasn't about the money anymore. Rachel watched me for a second. That's all she asked. What else would you like? I said gently. She hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. I just thought it would feel different. I nodded. It will, I said. Just not all at once. She absorbed that quietly. I kept thinking she said slowly that once I paid it back, everything would go back to normal. I looked at her. And now I asked. Now I realize that's not how it works, she said. No, I replied. It isn't. Silence settled between us again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was grounded, real. I've been thinking about something else, she said after a moment. What's that? She took a breath. I don't think I ever really understood what you went through after Dad died, she said. The words surprised me. She continued, I knew it was hard, but I didn't really think about what it meant for you. Managing everything on your own, making things stretch, being careful all the time. I didn't interrupt. I used to think you were just overly cautious, she admitted, like you worried too much. I smiled faintly. I've heard that before, I said. She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. Yeah, she said. That was me. Another pause. But now, she added, I get it. I leaned back slightly in my chair. What changed? I asked. She looked down at her hands. Standing on my feet all day, she said, counting hours, watching every dollar come in and go out, realizing how quickly things disappear if you're not paying attention. She looked up again, and realizing how easy it is to take someone else's stability for granted. Her voice softened on the last part. I nodded slowly. That's a hard lesson, I said. It is, she agreed. Another silence. Then she said something that mattered more than anything else she had said before. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, she said. I don't even think they should. I studied her face. There was no defensiveness there. No expectation. Just acceptance. But I do want to build something new, she continued. Something that's actually honest. I let her words settle. That takes time, I said. I know, she replied. And consistency. I know. And trust, I added. She nodded. I know that too. For a moment, we just sat there. Then slowly, I reached across the table. Not for a dramatic gesture. Not for a full reconciliation. Just a small step. I placed my hand over hers. She looked down at it, then back at me. And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not confidence, not pride, but humility. Real, grounded humility. I'm still your mother, I said quietly. I know, she replied. And I still love you. Her eyes filled slightly. I know, she said again. But I love myself too, I added. She nodded. I can see that now, she said. And that was the difference. Not just that she had changed, but that she could finally see me clearly too. Later that evening, after she left, I stood by the window watching the sun dip below the horizon. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel heavy. It felt steady, because what had been broken wasn't magically repaired. But it had been acknowledged, addressed, rebuilt piece by piece. And as I stood there, one thought settled gently in my mind. My payback wasn't about making her cry. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't even about the money. It was about truth. And the moment I chose to stop protecting her from it was the moment I finally started protecting myself. The hardest lesson I've learned in life is this: love and tolerance are not the same thing. For years, I believed that being a good mother meant forgiving quickly, avoiding conflict, and always putting my child first, even when it hurt me. I thought that protecting the relationship was more important than protecting myself. But what I didn't realize was that every time I ignored a boundary, every time I explained away behavior that didn't feel right, I was teaching my daughter something dangerous: that my love could be taken for granted. And the truth is, love without boundaries doesn't create closeness. It creates imbalance. What happened between me and Rachel was painful. There's no way around that. Being betrayed by your own child cuts deeper than anything else. But pain, when faced honestly, can become something else. It can become clarity. I learned that holding someone accountable is not cruelty. It is respect, both for yourself and for them. Because when you remove consequences, you remove the opportunity for growth. And without growth, relationships don't heal, they just repeat. Rachel's tears weren't my victory. Her change was, and my peace didn't come from exposing her. It came from finally choosing not to betray myself. So if you're watching this, and you've ever felt torn between loving someone and protecting your own dignity, I want you to know this. You are allowed to do both. You are allowed to say, I love you, but I won't accept this. You are allowed to choose yourself no matter your age, no matter your role, no matter how long you've stayed silent. And sometimes that choice doesn't destroy a relationship. Sometimes it's the only thing that can save it. If this story spoke to you, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? Where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? And if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. You're not alone in this, and your voice matters more than you think.